Question. Technically, is it impossible to be racist towards Mexicans? Mexicans, it's not a race. It's not necessarily an ethnicity. But you'll hear people say something, oh, well, that's racist towards Mexicans. And here's what the silliest thing made it come to mind. Here in the United States right now, M&M's candy has this campaign of trying out these new M&M's, and whichever one's the most popular, they're going to keep as a regular flavor for a while. So they have Thai coconut, they have English toffee, and they have Mexican jalapeno, which kind of sounds random, and I was thinking, and I think I even said, oh, I was going to joke and say, oh, that's racist towards Mexicans. That joke doesn't really even make sense, but I had said that. And then I thought, but what does that even mean to be racist towards Mexicans? Now, granted, in the United States, you have a certain idea of what it means when you think of someone who's Mexican. I understand there's been Chinese people living in Mexico for a long time, 5th generation Chinese Mexican person, and they're a Mexican by nationality. But in the United States, we don't focus on nationality as much as we do ethnic makeup. And so therefore, when we think Mexican, we actually in the United States think of largely Native American and then mix in the Spanish, etc. in there. That's what we think of. The same thing my grandma was. That's what we think of when we think of Mexican as a person. But because Mexicans aren't their own race and they're not their own ethnicity, can you really be racist towards them? Or is that simply implying that you're racist towards Native Americans? Or is it implying that you are discriminating against someone whose first language is Spanish? Or is it that you're discriminating against someone who is of Native American descent and speaks Spanish as their first language, and on top of that, maybe doesn't speak very much English? To discriminate a person like that, I think that's really what's being said. But we say racist towards Mexicans. Well, that's a very simple way of saying it. That doesn't really, it's not that you're being racist towards Mexicans. You're discriminating against someone who happens to have heritage from Mexico, who happens to maybe have Spanish as their first language and English as their second, who happens to be largely of Native American descent. But you can't technically be racist towards Mexicans. Or can you? Closing thought here. A couple weeks ago, I was at the grocery store. I see this man get out of a pickup truck, and in the back window is a Confederate flag. And I'm like, okay, well, there's that. There's first thing. And then I see the guy get out of the truck, and he has a black t-shirt with big white letters, and it says, "No habla stupid." That was his shirt. So that says a lot about that man's character, for one. But ultimately what he's implying is that he doesn't like Mexican people here in the United States speaking Spanish. He wants them to speak English. He's probably one of the kind of people that says, if you're going to be in my country, you need to learn to speak my language, because all these Mexicans are taking our jobs. In reality, if they learn to speak English as well as the rest of us, then they're going to be taking more of our jobs. So it's a complete paradox, but that's something people like that say. So his shirt, though, said it all. No habla stupid. It's implying that if you don't speak English as your first language and you're in the United States, then you're stupid. So if anything is racist towards Mexicans, I would say that shirt was, because specifically overall, especially here in, I'd say the South in the United States, most people who speak Spanish as their first language are of Mexican descent. There's a lot of people from Puerto Rico and all these other countries we can name. But overall, Mexican people. So now I'm really trying to figure out, what do I think? Do I think it's possible to be racist toward a Mexican? I think to really simplify that, we could say yes, but it's a loaded question. There's so much more discrimination going against someone who's Mexican. Because I think ultimately, if it were a Mexican person who spoke perfect English like I do, but they looked completely, they looked Mexican, and what I mean by that is not, again, the Chinese American fifth generation. Or Chinese Mexican. I mean someone who has prominent Native American features and very little, less on the Spanish European. If they looked that way but spoke perfect English and associated with people who were ultimately of white class, then it makes me wonder if they'd still treat them that way. If they simply looked different but acted like them, would that make a difference? It is a loaded question. Ultimately, I think it is possible to be racist towards Mexicans, but again, there's a lot more discrimination going on in there. I like to have open, honest conversations, even if they're politically incorrect, even if they make us maybe even feel uncomfortable. I think it's important to discuss this. And by the way, if you're not living in the United States and you're watching this in Europe, you're thinking, why are those Americans so racist? Why do they talk about this all the time? If you're an American, you know what it's like on a daily basis to fill out forms for the government and identify your race and ethnicity. And even surveys for stores, you have to fill it out because they want to make sure that certain races and ethnicities are not discriminated against. There's a lot of baggage here in the United States, bleeding over from the Civil War, and we're still dealing with it. But ironically, in the attempts to not discriminate, we ultimately seem obsessed with race and ethnicity. So that's why I have to kind of give that disclaimer now, so that makes sense for people who are not part of the United States. Your comments belong right here.